Hello my friends, welcome back. It's my second video from the USA, and as you can see I'm still on the same hotel, still on the same floor, still the same janky setup that you can see on my Patreon. It is so, what do I call it? Eastern European. I'm filming on a potato. This whole setup is a potato, but it works. The war don't stop, so I don't stop. The show must go on. Let's look at the military news from Ukraine. Last time we talked about, some previous video I talked about, there are reports of Russians penetrating through Ukrainian defensive lines in Avdiivka. Ukrainians have a three-layer defense all around Avdiivka. It has been very difficult for Russians to strike that settlement for the last 10 years, but now they managed to get through. How? Well, we have initial reports. Since for the last 4 months of actively sending armored convoys to Avdiivka, they all being destroyed, Russians now found an underground pipe. And they sent their recon group, a reconnaissance infantry, since you cannot take tanks through an underground pipe. This recon infantry went through the pipe and emerged on the other side of the Ukrainian three-layer defense and started causing trouble there. They emerged in the urbanized area. And this was good news for the Russians, so at the same time when these recon groups were starting to make trouble in Avdiivka, Russians attacked from the front, so the soldiers of Ukraine manning these three-layer defense were sandwiched between the onslaught of Russian armored convoy and Russian recon units in the back who emerged from the pipes. But the situation did not go as planned for the Russians, because Ukrainians sent their reinforcements also immediately to liquidate the Russian recon units that emerged in the city. And since Ukrainians had a very well-trained reserve ready for this, then these recon units were mainly destroyed. Some of them were taken prisoners. There are also already videos, GoPro footage about it. Since this recon group could not really retreat anywhere, and Russians are very known for their goodwill gestures or retreats, they mostly gave up. Of course, the convoy that attacked, the armored column that attacked at the same time, hoping to sandwich these three Ukrainian defensive layers, we have kamikaze drone footage and recon drone footage of that convoy being squashed to pieces. But what is interesting about the specific convoy is that there were T-55 and T-62 tanks used. I mean, these are the oldest Russian tanks still in the service. And usually Russians were using these tanks as stationary artillery pieces. Since the tank is so old and not trustworthy, they usually don't send them to offensive operations. They just set them here in a certain position and use the gun as an artillery barrel until it wears out. But in this case, they sent them straight to onslaught. The convoy was shot to pieces, and the Ukrainian reserves are still dealing with Russian recon units, but some of them have given up already. The situation is incredibly dense, and if I give you the feeling right now that things are secure in Avdiivka, then this is false. It is incredibly tense in Avdiivka, and Ukraine might have to pull out in the next few days. I'm just saying that this first attack by the Russians has failed or has been stopped by the Ukrainians, but this can change at any day. Since the first report was kind of serious, I want to give you something to laugh over very quickly. I'll take 30 seconds of your life. Look at this photo. This includes not only the Russian blunders, but also the Ukrainian failures. And I'll give you both on this one. As you can see, the blue area in the north, this is the tactical Russian feint. This is where they ran from Kiev because they just completely failed at this operation. The huge convoy known as the Great Russian Convoy to Kiev with 100,000 troops was bombarded daily and had to pull out in the end due to lack of everything: fuel, supplies, ammunition, food, everything. So the Great Russian feint. Orderly regroup from Kharkiv front. Yes, of course, orderly, giving the Ukrainians 400 armored vehicles in Izium, very orderly. The prank, the Wagner coup, they marched straight to Kiev, actually. They went to Moscow, and you can see the purple line like that. It's just a prank, bro. That's how Prigozhin was. Putin didn't like that prank, so he blew up the plane. Non-existent counteroffensive. So this is what the Russians call the non-existent Ukrainian counteroffensive, when they took back the entire Kherson Oblast. Well, of course, total Ukrainian failure is the Ukrainian counteroffensive, and this is supposed to be like what the Russians call total failure, but I wouldn't call it total failure, but it was a failure. The counteroffensive into summer 2023 was a failure. And you learn through failures. You cannot have war without failures, otherwise you're Napoleon. Even he made mistakes. Mariupol and Avdiivka, is it? Total Russian victory, of course. Both of these cities, unnecessary, non-existent bridges. Gesture of goodwill. This is the Snake Island right here. I mean, this map is filled with gestures of goodwill. Russians have a lot of goodwill to give. My friends, my editor Adrian has done a wonderful job and finally finished the first product from Ukraine. Mission accomplished. I give you the delivery of a lot of kamikaze drones to Alpha Group, SBU Alpha. Here is the video. Enjoy it since it's an eye candy. Adrian worked really hard on this. My friends, the moment is here. You have done it before and you did it again. These are one of the most cost-effective ways to destroy Russian tanks. These are small kamikaze drones. They cost in between $500 and $800. Russian tank costs above $500,000 to more. So taking a tank out with one of these drones is the most beautiful thing that can happen. So you are giving the Ukrainian units a possibility to liberate their land with these beautiful drones. With me are standing two guys from SBU Alpha, the best Ukrainian Special Forces unit, and their kill ratio with the drones is unbelievably off the charts. So you are most directly influencing the outcome of this war by giving these drones to the Ukrainian Special Forces. Thank you, my friends. Slava Ukraini! Now, my friends, we'll talk about a new Russian tactic. Since Russians have learned that Ukrainians are in a huge deficit of artillery shells, then they don't use these shells anymore on small charging Russian infantry units. They use them for armored vehicles. So Russia uses small charging infantry units because they know Ukrainians don't activate their artillery for that. Meaning sometimes they only send like 3-man squads. Knowing kamikaze drones, try not to hunt them to waste the drones, and artillery won't shoot. So what they do, they use you call these in Russian camels. They use prisoners and low-value soldiers like Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republic soldiers. They give ammunition and weaponry to these soldiers and tell them as soon as they get close enough to the Ukrainian front lines, just dig in. Don't do nothing else. Just dig in and survive. They don't. They usually die. The point is this ammunition and weapons they are carrying, because the next wave will be with Russian armored columns and with VDV, the Syndnik troops, paratroopers, who will go on an assault, and they already have these weapons and ammunition laying in the foxholes right before Ukrainian defensive lines, waiting for them. They don't have to transport them. So these camels are used as human meat wave transportation devices. Go as far as you can and then just die for Putin, and then the next wave will pick up your weapon. Just like Stalingrad, right? The good old days, my lads. Oh, the Russians love to cherish their World War II era memories. Well, now they get to relive them. Now, my friends, a thread for you about the Leopard 2A6. And, of course, I analyze it. First, let's look at the thread first and then analyze it later. Number one, and this information comes from the Ukrainian crews operating on this newest, best German tank. Number one, the vehicle has reached 80 kilometers per hour while the top speed is marked as 75, so they have already gotten more out of it than they're supposed to. Very good. Number two, very accurate. From 3 kilometers away, chance of hitting a target is almost 100. Very good. Love it. But now let's watch the video also very quickly, and then I have a few words to say about this tank.
The Leopard 2 crew consists of 4 people: tank commander, loader, gunner, and driver mechanic.
My driver doesn't even have a regular driver's license, can't drive a car. But here, he's a tank driver, and during training in Germany, they even nicknamed him Kamikaze. We went to places even the Germans were afraid to go.
The manual says its maximum speed is 72 kilometers per hour.
It's like Pimp My Ride. It's such a weird format about Leopard tank. You know, my driver don't even have a license, but here he drives a tank. Such a weird format.
And it is true in practice. At 3 kilometers, its hit rate is almost 100%.
And the loader, most importantly, must be strong. The physical load on him is substantial. After all, he has to work with these 30-kilogram shells.
The Leopard doesn't have an automatic loading system.
So far, speed overwhelmingly good, accuracy overwhelmingly good, but these are not the most important things in this war, and we'll get to it.
So a person has to load the projectiles.
It's a good machine overall, although now we are short on shells. We have to save high explosive ones. We need more shells.
And the commander is like a link that brings it all together. If the commander is good, if he finds an approach to everyone, then the crew will be intact and will work well.
So the thing with Leopard, it's an incredible tank on paper, incredible tank on the testing range, because you shoot very accurately there, you can test the speed and the jumping capabilities, whatever you want to test. But you don't know, you know what's one of the most important thing in this war? The reliability and the fact how easily you can fix the tank. And with Leopard, that is all not good, because it's German engineering and Germans like to over-engineer things, and German stuff is almost impossible to fix anywhere in the field, unless it was made 50 years ago, 60 years, 40 years ago. If it's new German stuff, forget about it, it's pretty bad. Sorry Germans, but just simplify your engineering process. Leopard breaks down quite often. It takes a hell lot of time to fix it, and sometimes it's impossible. You gotta send it back to Germany. That is a months-long process. Even if you send it to Poland to the fixing plants, it takes months. It's a headache. Now, if it goes to the front, it doesn't break down. It's fast. It's good. If it gets to the point that it's actually shooting, well, then its beauty comes out. It can shoot extremely accurately. Very positive ratings on that. I don't call ratings on tank, but the main thing is it cannot break down. A T-72, Russian T-72, also breaks down. It is a much weaker tank in capabilities than Leopard. But the fact is, you can fix it with a hammer and a stone. That's the main part, and it's incredibly fast and easy to produce. It's very mass-producible tank. It's robust. Of course, if you put them one-on-one in the shooting range, a Leopard will win any day of the week. But the thing is, in Ukraine, you need robust reliability. That's what you need. So I'm not saying a T-72 is a better tank. I'm saying that a Leopard is a very good tank, but it needs to be improved on the weakest parts, which is the mass producibility of it and the reliability of it. If you fix those two things, I think it's a very good tank. Now, my friends, I'll bring you a thread on FPV drones, and you heard so much about it. Everybody's talking about it, every military blogger, and it gets repetitive, but I'll try to give you some new light again, new perspective on the thing, and I'll try to leave out everything that is repetitive. Now, what is the FPV drone the best against? Well, against armored vehicles and electronic warfare units and everything that is a vehicle and equipment. And why? Because, let's say, armored vehicles, assault vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles, they are designed to be used offensively, and they are designed then to be stronger at certain areas where the designer saw that the enemy fire might be coming from. For example, the turret might be strong, or the front armor might be stronger. Well, an FPV drone takes that, and sometimes it's billions of R&D done by designers and researchers, takes that, throws it out of the window, because an FPV can just approach the tank from the back. All of the designs, everything, out of the window. So it gives a god level edge to the FPV operator and takes it away from the designer who made that tank impenetrable from the front. So the FPV is like using cheats. Second thing is that FPV drones are using munitions that otherwise would have to be disregarded, thrown away or exploded. Let's say Ukraine has or had a very big stockpile of old Soviet munitions, RPGs, and explosives that they cannot use in their first intended purpose anymore, because it would be dangerous. They are out of date, these munitions. But just tie the robust explosives to FPV. You can reuse them and still destroy a tank with more accuracy and more precision than you would be able to then shoot it out of the RPG barrel. I mean, it's much harder to destroy 100 tanks with shoulder-fired RPG guns than with 100 FPV drones. So it gives a new life to things, to explosives that otherwise couldn't be used at all. So it's cheap and mass-producible. It's very hard to defend against the FPVs. One one possibility is a jammer, but to get a jammer that works on all frequencies is incredibly expensive and not mass producible at all. What is mass producible is this small jammer that focuses on one fixed frequency, but then all the Russians or the Ukrainians have to do, depending on which side is jamming, is change the frequency of the FPV, and then again it's anti-jammable for some time until the enemy changes the jamming frequency. And changing that frequency is very difficult. You have to change the entire device, because devices which can jump between frequencies automatically, these jammers are very expensive. It takes a lot of time to manufacture them. So jamming is not so black and white easy than it looks like. Secondly, defending against an FPV drone is, yeah, you can put the cope cage all over it. Ukrainians are doing it, Russians are doing it, but it might not help, because the first one blows the hole into the cage and the second one finishes off the tank, or the FPV just doesn't fly into the cage and flies into some other area, like into the turret or into the tracks, immobilizing the tank, and in the Russian case, the crew leaves the tank after that, so the cope cage might not also help. So there is not perfect anti-weapon for FPV drones right now. Yeah, a jammer is, but a weapon needs to be also as mass producible and cheap as the drone itself. And jammers are not that cheap and mass producible. So as of now, it is still the battleground of FPVs, and there is no good antidote against them. Now, my friends, I'll read you a very short story about why Russian military doesn't retrieve the bodies. There is a very, very huge economical issue behind that. It's not just that they don't care about the dead. That's just a small, that is one part of it. But the other part is billions of USD that they save by not retrieving the dead. I'll read it to you. In the city of Kamensk-Uralsky, for a week now, they have not been able to bury a 47-year-old Vyacheslav Sarayev, who died in the northern military district. Relatives refused to hold a funeral ceremony until they found out the exact cause of the soldier's death. The conclusion says that he died of a heart failure, as we were told. He died of fright, said the cousin of the deceased Vyacheslav. But his commander contacted us, who assures us that it was not a heart attack. He died from his injuries, and this makes everything so much different. Maybe some mistake occurred, and the result of another fighter's examination were included in our certificate. Relatives are worried that due to the death of diagnosis, my mother will not receive Putin's payments. So if the soldier died of a heart attack, no money will be paid. If he died in battle of injuries, some money will be paid, and in Russian terms, it will be a big amount of money. I mean, Putin is holding the entire population captive by keeping them poor and then manipulating them with war money. So their relatives refuse to bury the rotting relative body because they want the diagnosis to be changed, because they want that money. They don't care about the guy itself. They just don't care. Let's not bury. Let him rot. We just need the money. So we need him to be stated that he died in battle. Putin don't want that. Putin doesn't want to pay out those hundreds of billions in reparations to the families, because it's a huge amount in the end. So he would much rather have these bodies not retrieved, or that they all died of fear and heart attack. So this is how the Russian military is saving up money, by making the soldiers disappear, not retrieving them, even if they do know that's the soldier. They just, oh, we lost him, or bury them in the front somewhere and he's gone. So Putin promises that money, but there are so many easy ways for the military around paying those reparations that no families actually receive it. Or if they should receive it, then generals can just take it as corruption money anyway. So the families who are bought into this war with Putin's war money don't really see it usually. And my friends, lastly, I want to end with, in my eyes, very positive news. And we know all war is war of economic, war of attrition. All war is like that. And now I want to focus on Odessa Port, because the old Russian Black Sea Fleet's goal would be to minimize Ukrainian exports and blockade Ukraine as a country with no navy, blockade them from the sea. What is Ukraine able to do? Ukraine has able to push the Russian Black Sea Fleet away from most bigger parts of the Black Sea with their sea babies. Yes, relatively stupid name for a genius Ukrainian marine drone, which has destroyed about 15 to 20% of the entire Russian Black Sea Fleet. Russia and Putin itself is a big... Putin is a big fan of Peter the First, Peter the Great. Peter the Great was a big believer in navies and the projection of Russian power. Putin knows the importance of navies and the power projection in the seas. He doesn't want to risk losing his Black Sea fleet, so he's keeping it in safe distance right now. And Ukraine has been able to show as an underdog that they now export from Odessa grain and whatever they want. I'll read you the report, and it's very magnificent. During the 6 months of operation of the Ukrainian corridor from the ports of Great Odessa, 661 ships exported more than 20 million tons of cargo to 22 countries of the world. This one was announced by Alexander Kubrakov, the Deputy Prime Minister of the Reconstruction of Ukraine. Ports Greater Odessa are increasing cargo transshipment. In January, 6.3 million tons were exported, which is almost equal to pre-war level. So Russia, with their entire Black Sea fleet, has not been able to push Ukrainian exports down. And even now, Ukrainian exports are closing to pre-war levels, while Ukraine at the same time, right now, I talked about it in my previous video, is diminishing Russian oil exports because they are striking Russian oil processing facilities almost daily. And I'm not talking about close to Ukraine. We're talking about 500,000 kilometers from Ukrainian soil. These cheap, mass-producible Ukrainian drones just fly over Russian territory, which is not protected by anti-air defense systems, and they just hit with pinpoint accuracy into one of those oil facilities, and the fires are very hard to put out. The repairment might take months, if it is possible at all, and processes have to be stopped. And these processes, the export of oil, is what funds the military directly. So Ukraine is diminishing Russian exports, while Russia is not able to diminish Ukrainian exports on the Black Sea. And this, in my eyes, is a victory, even though Ukraine might lose Avdiivka and some areas on the front. They can hit from the rear. And so I know it sounds funny, but that's the truth. Now, my friends, for the second time in USA, I'll butcher the Patreon names. GMO Mark, Bob Asbil, Gary McDonald, Kit Edmondson, Jochen Gollop. Thank you to these 5 people. I am able to be in USA right now, focus on gathering aid for Ukraine. I'm meeting a lot of people, and you'll be seeing all of my trip in my Patreon. All of the behind the scenes, everything that I cannot post on YouTube. It's up on my Patreon for all of the patrons to see. It's special footage. Until my next video, my friends, which I aim to do tomorrow. Slava Ukraini, and bye-bye.